Hey everybody, welcome back to the garage. Today we're going to be working on Black Bart, my dad's Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. I believe this is a 2005. It's developed a leak on the ground underneath it, which after a little bit of research we've deemed is coming from the valve cover gasket. So we're going to tear into it a little bit. You guys can follow along and see how this goes. Depending on what year Jeep Wrangler TJ you have, they changed up some things. Some of the routing on the air conditioning lines, electrical lines is different. My other Jeep Mossy has a body lift, which gives you more room between the valve cover and the cowl back here, which makes doing this easier. But this one's a stock Jeep basically in its current form mechanically. So we're going to get to tearing some stuff apart and making some room under here. Well, the first things I like to get rid of is this air box, because this pipe going over the top gets in the way. That's a 5/16. That gets this loose. This just pulls off and get that out of the way. Set it off to the side. Then we got a plug up here. Just push on one side of it, it'll squeeze, and it'll let you disconnect that. If you put this back together, you'll end up with a engine light if you don't reconnect that. Give that a little bit of a twist, and that guy comes off. Now we gotta figure out what else we gotta get out of the way. Throttle cable. Unclip it from those clips. This vacuum line needs to come loose. This one fell off. We can set him aside. Not uncommon. And already we're getting black fingers. What else we gotta get aside? These guys, the hot water going to the heater core. They clip into a plastic clip over here. We can kind of bend those down out of the way gently, making sure we don't damage them. And there's a clip that just pulls off over one of the studs that we're going to have to take out for the valve cover. What else we got in the way here? Lots of things. Biggest thing you're going to want to order, I think there's 3 different gaskets depending on what year you have. Make sure you get the right one for your motor, and some cleaner, because this is going to be greasy, and putting it back together all greased up, you're just going to have a leak again. Plug off up here. It should just pull off of there, I think. That pulled off and slide it to the side so it's out of the way. I'd like to get this out of the way. Should be a bolt there and there, and this bracket will come loose, and I can just lay that over there. You could take and just flex this, but the plastic shell on this guy is getting dried out, and there ain't no sense breaking it if I don't have to. If you had, some of the models I believe had cruise control, there was another cable that went across here, same thing. You don't want it in the way. You want to be kind of gentle with it. Let's get some more tools. And as with everything of this era, some of it's metric and some of it's standard and some of it's Japanese or something. Who knows what it is. See that there? That's apparently metric. Well, it always pays to have multiple tool kits. There we go. That's set right down in there. That almost disappeared down there. Sure, set your bolts somewhere so they don't fall down into that. That would be not good. Hello, Facebook. Also, if you're watching this, we have a Facebook page. We put some stuff on there that you won't find on YouTube. Worth checking out if you're into cars. Alright, so that's now out of the way. We're basically wanting to get everything that goes over this stuff. We've got wiring in this box for our fuel injectors here. It needs set off to the side. It should just pop up off there if I can get a hold of it right. May have to work it a little bit. I might have to get a bar to get up underneath it and help it up gently. I'm also figuring on doing an oil change after this in case anything gets in there. It's due for an oil change. So that'll work into the progress of this project. It's very highly unlikely you would drop anything in here and lose it. But, because there's a butterfly in here. But if you don't notice you drop something in there and you rev that thing, it's going to suck it straight through. So we're going to put this over top of that so we don't have to worry about me accidentally doing something and not noticing. Because you guys will see it and I won't. You'll be screaming at your screen. Which you probably are already anyway. When in doubt, grab them all, right? Work up a little bit. These are on there pretty good. And the key is not to break this stuff. You can help. And the key at the factory was for them to make it as quickly as possible and as easy as possible they could make it. So they weren't worried about us tearing this off later. Also keep in mind you don't yank on these wires and pull something apart that don't need to be apart. Alright, we got two of them. It's hooked in 3 places. Of course, the one you can't hardly see. And rocking back and forth seemed to help. There. That's loose. We can just set it kind of that way to the side a little bit to give us some room. At this point, I believe I can start removing the bolts to hold on the valve cover. So it ain't that long and you're into what you actually came here for. Me, I'm looking for the extension I lost already. Made the way to the ground, that's good. Yeah, don't lose anything down around the spinny fan and fire it up because you'll have problems. Alright, we're going to set these all somewhere right down into your cleaner box for right now. Now you need to keep track, some of these are bolts, some of these are studs for different things to set on. And actually, since I'm going to keep track of that, we're going to set these ones on this side on the windowsill in the order that we took them out. That way when we go back together, we'll know which ones go where. And the ones I take out of that side will set over there somewhere the same way. Might help my memory a little bit. And there's lots of bolts. And they made them all hidden under stuff. Now you can, if you wanted to, you can, and you had your antifreeze system drained anyway, you can take these lines off. That'll help, but not that much. But if you don't have antifreeze in it, why have it in your way? Alright, now we're starting around that side. We'll start setting them over here. Now I'm taking these off with the impact. Going back on, we're probably going to be a little gentler. Because you don't want to break something, over tighten something and bend the valve cover and then have problems. And on this particular sheet, actually looking like there's only one studded bolt that I got to worry about, which will be a good thing. This bar clipped down onto the head studs, or I think on some of them that actually hooks onto these. Them all over where you don't knock them on the ground and you can't find them. Nope, I lied. There's another stud at the back here that the electrical harness is setting on, which is also going to be an interesting thing. But it is picking straight up, which is good. At least until it quit picking straight up. Same thing, you don't want to drop anything in that hole either. It'll also be bad. But seeing we're going to have the valve cover completely off here in a minute, there'll be all kinds of places we can drop stuff in we don't want to. Like that. Now we're getting down in where we're going to have to get a ratchet. Apologize for any of the roaring sounds. I've got the heater on the other side. It's a little chilly here today. If we can get this to put on there. There we go. Stud was fairly. The nut on the stud back here was fairly loose. Alright, and that one's a nut. Do the same thing. We'll keep track of where we're putting these. Now this is one of your main wiring harnesses. So you don't want to be real violent to it. The nut actually went on and helped hold it on. Get up underneath over here, gently just lift it off of there. That side's lifting off. That side come loose. we got a zip tie. The back over here we're going to cut loose. That'll give us some more room. Being sure to cut the zip tie and not the wiring harness. Alright, that's cut loose. So that'll give us a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more room on that. Get the zip tie, get it out of there. Same thing, the shark skin and stuff, just getting older, it's getting weak. So you gotta be mindful of it. Now we got that a stud that nut was down onto, we gotta get out. Now, stuff I didn't show you folks is before I got into this, I degreased, used a Purple Power, I believe it was, soaked this down and pressure washed it out a couple times to make sure that I wasn't dealing with a total greasy nightmare. Getting looser, and to keep from getting more dirt and grime down into the engine, which you don't want ever. So all that's going to do is cause premature wear and tear on everything. All right. Out of the way. Back bolts are the least fun ones. We got another stud holding wiring harness on. This one did not have a nut holding the wiring harness. Seemed to think that it should have had, but that's all right. I think there's one more, yes, one more bolt clear at the very back. You cannot see or hardly feel. There that is. Get started loose. Good thing is you can start it loose with this. Pull your ratchet off and pull it out the rest of the way by the extension. And hopefully not drop it. Because who knows where that'll end up. Alright, so that's out of there. Now, a little bit of wiggly wobbling. Nope, we got one other thing holding us up. This bracket for the air conditioner on this one needs to come out. Hooks into one of your head studs. Right there. Set it over here with these bolts. Now that bracket will pick up. Slide it off to the side so it won't catch this. Hopefully it'll come out this time. Hopefully. It's a tight fit out of here. Just need to be persistent and you'll get it. And you don't want to bend it. Front radiator hose is really close to things also on this. So as you go up, it's got to kind of go backwards until you get it worked around. You catch on everything. There we go. And remember, it'll be just as much fun going back in. Wiring harness going up over the top's always fun. Steal our rag for a second. So even though we degreased it, it's still greasy. Put that back. Yeah, what they were thinking putting this wiring harness here, I will never figure out. The previous models that went behind the motor, maybe they were thinking that you got it in an accident or something that wouldn't push the motor back into the harness and cause problems, but if you're in an accident and you push the motor back, you got other problems anyway. Well, we need a little bit more clearance on this. Alright, we got another bolt over here we can remove to get a little bit more clearance. This harness comes around. It's a really nice impact, but my spring on the end has give up the ghost and the extensions fall out all the time. I always forget to hold them. You can hold them there with the bolt. Okay. Hopefully that will give us a little bit more slack on our harness. Another one right here that we're going to take too, just to give us extra. I hate taking it apart more than I have to, but better than fighting something else. Alright, now harness, will you get up high enough that we can get over the valves and get the cover off of the valves? Almost. So close. Worst thing is you can't even get your hands in there. There we go. Now we're out. Now you can see your drivetrain, your valve train rather. You want to check and make sure you haven't knocked anything into where you don't want it to be. In the current situation, it's looking good. And this is our gasket. It's caused all this trouble. My particular situation, back around here, you can see how nasty it is. I believe the bolts loosened up and then it allowed all the gunkus to run out through. So we'll take this over and make sure it matches the new gasket, and then we'll get to putting her back together. All right, everybody, welcome back. What we're up to now is got a razor blade, and I'm going along the sealing surface, and we're scraping all the old goo and everything that sealed it down before. And we're scraping it away from the inside of the engine. So we don't want to contaminate anything inside of there. We're taking our time and just working our way around. This is tedious, but it's important, because the cleaner this surface is, the better everything's going to seal. And I'm going to just go around and around and around and clean and clean and clean and clean. Now once this surface is clean, I'm going to do the same thing to the valve cover. Probably won't need the scraper as much. And then we can go to putting the valve cover back on. So we'll bring you back after it gets some more cleaning done. So this is going to be boring. Yes, at this point in the process, I'm contemplating the sanity of wanting to work on vehicles again. And I've decided I probably am insane. But I have found that a pair of forceps with a utility knife blade on, or not, scraper blade on the end of them works pretty good for getting down in these little nooks and crannies. Trying to clean out underneath here. It is far from a fun project, but you need to go through and do it. It's going to be miserable. You're going to hate it. You're going to rethink your life. But in the end, cleaning this up the best you can will only make the project better in the long run. And trying to see what you're trying to see is also fun. Now, there we go. Now I can kind of see where I gotta see. But yeah, getting in here is definitely one of the harder parts of this. Scraping out all the nooks and crannies. Give it a good scraping. Then get a nice clean rag. And spray some brake clean or whatever your favorite degreaser is. It's automotive friendly. And work it around in the nooks and crannies. And just keep cleaning away. Alright, we'll bring you back when it is clean and we are starting assembly this time. I just wanted to share how I found it to kind of clean in there. Alrighty, we've got our parts cleaned up. We've got this cleaned up. It's time to see if we can put everything back together. You notice there's 2 holes on the one side of the gasket, the new one. And there's a stud here and here that those holes go over. So you gotta kind of feed this thing down in there. Don't bend it too very much. Just enough to get it in place. Of course, this wiring harness and this little hose over here is going to be in the way the entire time, because that's what they do. Set it down over them bolts. Make sure it does match the profile of what you have in here. The other thing, your kit should come with these little rubber grommets, and you stick those in these holes after removing the old ones, of course, and then there'll be little caps that go on there and stick down in the hole. Want to replace all those while you're in the process. That sets your tension on all of this. Now we can see if we can get this guy back in there, which is always fun. Try to lift this harness up out of the way. Wiggle everything kind of together. Make sure we're not catching on anything. It's always fun, because there's just enough room to get in there once you get it wiggled just the right way. Excuse me. Oh, and if you put it in backwards, it ain't ever gonna fit. Ha. Almost did though. That's better. Yeah, if yours has a sticker, it's always towards the front. I knew that was working way harder than it should. Make sure we don't have nothing. Nothing's out of place. Okay. Hose, and voila, we are back in place. Now clean my fingers a little bit and we'll start putting the bolts back in. My fingers were clean enough. Now this is where it comes in handy if you remember the order of where you put your bolts. Things around a little bit so things line up. I'm just going to start by placing them in the holes. We don't want to tighten everything until we get them all in place. This is the one that gets a stud. You can tell because of the marks on the pipe where the clip goes down over that. It's good to double check. There's Facebook again. And then this back one also gets a stud because the wiring harness bolts down on top of it. And then there's the nut for that. We won't do that till we tighten. And then on this particular motor, I believe they're all bolts until you get to the very back, and then you got one stud that holds the wiring harness once again. Let's bolt this way. I like to give the valve cover just a little wiggle between every bolt just to make sure things are seating like they're supposed to. This one back here is fun because you can't hardly see it. This is the stud. One more around the back where you really can't see it. This would be a bad one to forget about because it's gonna leak there. If you do. Also be a bad one to drop because you're never gonna find it again. Alright. We'll dig up some sockets and get to tightening that all down. Apparently I need a battery for my light up here. Alright, on these I've switched up to my 1/4" drive ratchet. So we're just going to go around starting in the middle and work in a W pattern kind of out of the center. And we just want to make these snug. We don't want to torque them down. You're just wanting to squeeze that rubber gasket. And these grommets that we put on around the outside of the valve cover kind of helps set that tension as you go. After we get them all kind of snug, and we'll probably go back through with a torque wrench. You look on the internet, there's 1,000 different torque specs for these. So they did have several different variations of covers, plastic ones, metal ones, different gaskets. It's the plethora of things they did with these. I'm just going to basically go with what feels right. And you want it snug, but you don't want to crank these down because all you're going to do is deflect the grommets. And after a point, the little metal clips in there are only going to go so far before they can't push anything down any further. And then it's all relying on the rubber spring tension on the grommet. And if you feel yourself coming up against that, time to stop. Because you're not going to get it any tighter than when that little metal cap bottoms out. You're going to go do this one time. Also helps if you have a wobble extension on these back ones. You guys seen me do enough of that, so I'll go through this time, get them all snug, then I'll go through and just put the tiniest amount of torque on them. Then we'll start reassembly. All right, now we've got the valve cover all tightened down where it goes, and I've just snugged them. You don't get out at the end of the wrench or yank on it. You just want to snug them. Now I got to put the wiring harness back in place. There's a nut that holds it on. Once we get her set down in where she goes here, there we go. And this one you don't want to, it's just a piece of plastic so it's tightened against, so you just want to make it the same thing. Just snug enough that it don't rattle loose. Alright, now these get pushed back down on the studs. Our wiring harness is secured. And we can flip, get this out of the way. Careful not to drop anything in the hole. Our throttle cable back over where it used to be. Something else to think about is there's this tin insulation under here. When you're putting your valve cover on, make sure it doesn't get under this valve cover, because it will not help it seal. And it appears as though that's how mine was. That somebody, they probably had a leak and put a gasket on or something, or who knows what they were doing, but some of this insulation, it was under the valve cover. So with that under there, it was never going to seal. That clips back into there. This clips back into this one. You want to make sure that things are routed where it makes sense. Apparently that's a size smaller than that. So, I think we still have that loaded up in our machine here. Yep. That's snugged up, and now it's done. Never to be seen again. Where did my socket go? There it is. Then this guy, we had it unbolted. Put it back in place. It just has a nut going onto a head bolt here. It's not an awkward place to try to reach your fingers in at all. Even a little bit. There we go. That's tightened down. Now we got 2 more bolts that's holding this wiring harness over here on the side of the intake that we took out to give us more room for the wiring harness back there. We got to put back in. Same thing, it's just going into plastic, so we don't want to really tighten those too much. Just enough to snugger down. Reconnect this PCV valve, I'm guessing is what that would be. And now we can put the air cleaner assembly back on. That was a nice new air filter. You want to make sure you don't have any extensions or stuff laying down in there, because when you go to put your tools away, you'll never find them. Put that down in, a couple clips. This one back in here is always fun. There we go. That's back on. We got this guy. It's always fun to get in. This plugs into this side. Alright. And air intake tube. So that goes on there. That side goes on there. 5/16. Just a little bit of tight. A little bit of tight. And we gotta find the plug that goes there. Because if you forget that, you're going to have a light for sure. Alright, that just slides on, snaps in. We'll give it a little bit of a look over here. I think we have it all back together. Ah, one more piece. Just got to remember where I put it. Where did I put it? The bracket for the coolant hoses going to the heater core just snaps on, and then the hoses snap into it. And with that, she should fire up and be ready to roll. I'm going to do an oil change on it. You guys don't need to see that. It's pretty basic stuff. But that's a valve cover gasket. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, ask questions in the comments. We'll do our best to help you. And thanks for watching. Till the next Jeep adventure or truck, or who knows what I have in here. We'll see you then.